Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's nice to see some familiar names in the list of attendees, but there are some folks we don't know yet, and we hope to change that. Because one of the things that you'll see is that our project is very interdisciplinary, and there are a lot of different ways in which folks can get plugged in now or down the road, because we're going to lay out a rough timeline for our work, and perhaps that'll also spur some ideas on where and when folks can get plugged in. So very briefly, I'm going to do introductions, and these are going to be somewhat formal introductions, but I'm doing them because I think that they provide important signifiers for how interdisciplinary our project is. So Dr. Carmen Valdez is an associate professor, chief of the Division of Community Engagement and Health Equity, and faculty director of community-driven initiatives in the Department of Population Health. She's also an associate professor at the UT Steve Hicks School of Social Work. Dr. Valdez is a community-based participatory researcher with a special interest in mental health promotion and intervention with Latinx immigrant families. She is also interested in understanding the role of social policy, neighborhood, and family factors on immigrant health. Gina Lamont is founder, president, and chief innovation officer at EcoRise, our anchor partner for this flagship. She has 15 years of experience working with innovative educational programs throughout Latin America, South Asia, and the US. While in graduate school at UT Austin, she studied social entrepreneurship and nonprofit management. In 2008, Gina launched EcoRise Youth Innovations, a social venture teaching eco-literacy and design innovation in K-12 schools. Gina has served on the South by Southwest Education Advisory Board and is a former co-chair of Austin ISD's Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee. And I'm Miriam Solis. I'm an assistant professor of community and regional planning at the UT School of Architecture. I teach on and conduct research on the intersection of environmental justice, infrastructure, and the environment. And through my work, I try to highlight procedural and policy strategies that advance social justice. As part of my work, I engaged in community engaged methods, including partnerships with local nonprofits and local government. I'd like to encourage everyone to use the Google document as we move forward, because it will hopefully capture some of your thinking during our presentation. So let me see. Catherine, take it away.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for that kind introduction. For this Planet Texas 2050 flagship project, our goal is to work with frontline communities to understand how carbon emissions affect health, and also what opportunities and challenges communities envision for a decarbonized future. Next, please. And traditionally, when we talk about decarbonization, it has come from a technical expertise, in that proponents have focused on developing new technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But our approach is different and certainly complementary, in that we really want to conduct inductive methods so that we can generate theory that is based on the observations and narratives of communities. Next, please. And so our focus will specifically be with youth and schools. And the reason why we're focusing on youth is that often youth of color in particular are seen in our colonial society as property without property, where the spaces they occupy are often uncertain, and there are spaces where youth are displaced, where they can be arrested, deported, and even killed. And climate crisis is part of that uncertainty that they experience in their environments. Of course, youth are also highly knowledgeable of and have a vision of what environment they would like to see in the places that they navigate day in and day out. And so we see that as an opportunity as well for them to make plays. Now, schools are probably, after home, the one environment where students of color predominate, and also where there are high levels of neurotoxicants. Schools are a very appropriate and prime opportunity for a decarbonized future, also because they serve as an anchor for families and for other community stakeholders. Next, please. We will use community-based participatory research because we are very interested in the lived experience and how health is shaped by climate justice, but also climate crisis. And so we will incorporate various community voices and sources of knowledge so that we can inform practices and policies that can be useful to schools and to other settings. We hope that our research will be actionable, immediate, and that it can be disseminated so that it can be used by all the different stakeholders, including youth. And we really see our work as part of a research practice partnership with our primary anchor partner being EcoRise. And Gina will describe next the work of EcoRise, and she is the director of the organization.
Thank you. It's great to be here. A little bit of background about EcoRise. We launched in 2008, and we're a nonprofit that's based here in Austin. But we have programs all around the country. And ultimately, our mission is to mobilize a new generation of leaders to design a sustainable future for all. In doing this, we offer school districts, curriculum, professional development, consulting services, and even student innovation grants that allow the students to learn about environmental sustainability issues, climate issues, environmental justice issues, develop solutions to issues in their own neighborhood, and receive some funding from us to be able to implement those solutions in their communities. Within our kind of spectrum of programs, we have everything ranging from green building and workforce development programming to a biomimicry and science program, as well as what we call sustainable intelligence, which is a kindergarten through 12th grade environmental literacy program, teaching everything from indoor air quality to energy conservation, electric vehicles, the whole gamut. Go ahead. Right now around the country, we're serving over 300,000 students, working with a little over 2,000 schools. And within the state of Texas, because this is where we're from, we have the biggest footprint. About half of those schools and teachers and students are based in Texas. And as we've grown throughout the last 12 years, it's been quite apparent that most communities, while they may have a lot of different resources supporting schools and students off campus as well in informal settings like parks and nature centers and such, they may have a lot of resources, but there's no strong and consistent data that tells us what is the baseline, which students are receiving this type of education, and how can organizations work more closely with one another, with government, with funders, with schools to ensure that this is the type of education that all students have access to. So it was with that acknowledgement and understanding and learning as we were growing into different communities around the country that we spun up an experiment, if you will, a couple of years ago that has now become known as Gen Thrive. And the intent was really to take a systemic approach to understanding what is the state of environmental literacy education and climate education in the US. We had 3 objectives. The first was to understand sort of a gap analysis and landscape analysis and know, which schools, which regions have access to these types of resources. But then also to look at all of those different, service providers and programs and find ways in which we could join forces and really build an alliance of resources and partnerships that could support the scaling up of this type of education around the country. The third piece was to use data visualization, which is a really savvy thing in the world of environmental ed, not something that many people do, but using data visualization and data period to understand where's the need and how can we increase the support from government, from funders, from policymakers to be able to bring our programs to more schools. So with the help of the folks at TAC at UT, as well as other supporters of this project, we've been able to build out a few different technology tools. First of all, we have a climate equity and education map that has become a really popular tool that helps the movement as a whole, but also communities locally understand and discover where various resources, whether that's somebody who offers teacher training or curriculum or field trips or guest speakers, where they could find those resources and bring them to their communities. But also, what is the relationship between the concentration of these programs and issues of environmental pollutants, climate risk, social equity, workforce development opportunities, just a whole gamut of different indicators. So we can really ensure that the community at large, whether it's folks from the school district side or from the service provider side, can help make the case for why this type of education matters and how it connects to community health and wellness and the economy and resilience as a whole. The next tool that we created, and this was very specifically with our friends at TAC, is the Field Trends and Resource Directory. So this is something that we've launched in Texas, and we're this fall going to be doing another round of survey collection and data collection, but we've also managed to expand to other states as well in some of the survey efforts. And this is a tool that allows us to see field trends. So looking at sort of meta trends, like what ages are we serving? What exact environmental topics are we teaching? What sectors are we coming from? And also be able to filter on certain qualifications, like whether it's standards aligned to the TEKS, or whether it is serving rural communities, and be able to pull a directory of filtered search results so that communities can very simply and easily find the resources that they want to bring to their campuses or to their students. I'll leave it at that for now. And I think we're jumping back over to Miriam.
Yeah, so this is a research practice partnership, as we've said. So the research part of it actually involves multiple methods. And Gina's actually started talking about several of those methods, and Carmen pointed out our overarching approach of using CBPR. As part of that, we're going to engage survey and spatial analyses methods. And this is, as Gina pointed out, going to consist of using the mapping information to identify trends and correlations. In urban planning, for example, we're very concerned right now with patterns of gentrification and displacement. One of the layers that EcoRise has included in their data is the location of green schools, so LEED certified green schools. So there's a question there about who has access to those schools, who's attending those schools when it comes to where these infrastructural improvements are being made. With regard to the CBPR approach, we're undertaking a local coalitions approach. Our plan is to co-develop 3 coalitions across Texas. One ideally located in a rural site and an urban site in Central and West Texas and the Gulf Coast. As part of our membership, we envision school teachers and administrators, youth, community organizations, and city officials. And a very important part of this is our goal isn't to develop necessarily something new, that this is actually going to build on EcoRise's existing relationships with teachers and schools and students and administrators, so that we can build on efforts that communities have been leading for a long time. And we're also going to work with the coalition members to undertake photo, voice, and narrative methods. And this is going to consist of workshops with youth where they document their concerns and priorities, their visions for what a green future is, using their phones or other devices. So we create a visual representation of what's important to them when it comes to what we consider greening efforts. And we're going to bring all of this information together. So the photo, voice, and narrative data is going to be geocoded and combined with the survey and spatial data that we have. And then we seek to put that information into action. So there are studies that show that in the public health field that sometimes it takes more than 10 years for research to reach practice. So for new insights and information, to be developed into actual policy interventions and strategies. As part of a coalition approach, we actually seek to combine our efforts with local school building plans or climate mitigation and adaptation plans to engage in small-scale greening projects in real time. And then ideally also at a larger scale, this digital platform that's created will be used by communities and organizations across Texas and hopefully beyond. So very roughly, our work plan is, we're in our planning year. A lot of planning is going to happen this summer. Year 2 is going to be dedicated to assembling the coalitions and formalizing our partnerships with local communities. Year 3 is going to be a lot of the photo voice and storytelling efforts. Year 4 is going to be an incubator, largely consisting of an event where we exchange this information and new insights, and also when we implement the greening projects. And then year 5 is going to be wrap up and final reporting.